The scream that came through my phone was so sharp and frantic that for half a second I thought someone had been shot. Lincoln, they're smashing the doors. There are guys in body armor in the apartment. It was my brother Chase, and his voice was breaking apart in real time. I didn't jump to my feet. I didn't spill my coffee. My pulse didn't even spike the way it should have. I just sat there in a quiet cafe in downtown Zurich, one hand around a small cup of espresso, watching snowdrift across the old square outside the window. What stopped me cold wasn't fear. It was recognition. I knew exactly what he had done, and I knew exactly who had made him think he could do it. "Lincoln, are you hearing me?" he yelled. "They've got rifles on me. Call the building manager. Tell him who I am. Tell him to stop this." He was panicking, but beneath the panic was something familiar. Certainty. The absolute belief that I would fix it. That no matter how badly he screwed up, I would once again rush in and absorb the blast radius. That had always been my place in the family. Chase made the mess. I cleaned it up. He created the damage. I paid for it. He burned through consequences. I stood in front of them. But sitting there in Zurich, with snow falling in silence outside and his terror crackling in my ear, I realized something had finally shifted. His panic didn't own me anymore. "Who gave you the spare key?" I asked. My voice came out flat, calm, almost clinical. "I'm a senior cybersecurity architect for a Fortune 500 company. I don't usually ask questions unless I already know the answer." There was a pause, not a long one, just long enough for him to realize he'd stepped onto unstable ground. Mom and Dad had it last, and just like that, his fear curdled into indignation. "They said it was fine. You're living in Switzerland now. You weren't using the place. Just call downstairs and tell them I'm allowed to be there." He had let himself into what he still believed was my penthouse with the emergency key my mother had hidden away years ago. He'd hauled in luggage, settled himself in, and treated my home like overflow storage for his failed life, because that's what my family had always believed. Whatever I built was, eventually, theirs. They didn't see boundaries. They saw inventory. They didn't see privacy. They saw access. And this time, they had crossed into something they did not understand. "You need to do something," he shouted. I heard a heavy crash in the background, then boots, then a commanding voice barking orders. I stared out at the snowfall and said the only honest thing left to say. "It isn't my penthouse." Then I ended the call. What Chase didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the Tribeca penthouse where he was currently being pinned to the floor had stopped being mine 28 days earlier. I had already sold it. The new owner was a brutally aggressive commercial real estate attorney with zero patience and even less mercy, and I had personally transferred full control of the apartment's high security system to him before I left the country. My family thought they were helping Chase quietly move into my place behind my back. Instead, they had walked him straight into a felony. If that sounds cold, then you need to understand what my family had been training me for my entire life. When people ask where I'm from, I usually say Boston. That's geographically true. Emotionally, I came from a house where one son was raised to consume and the other was raised to provide. My parents, Richard and Eleanor, had a system, even if they never called it that. Chase was the golden child, the gifted one, the sensitive one, the one with potential. Every failure of his was treated like a temporary delay before greatness. I was the other thing families like ours create, the dependable one, the durable one. The one who gets good grades, causes no trouble, solves problems, and quietly carries weight no child should ever have to carry. I wasn't treasured, I was utilized. One of my clearest memories of that structure happened when I was 16. Chase was 14 and had stolen a box of road flares from a construction site because he thought they'd be fun to light in the backyard. The second one ignited, he panicked and dropped it. It rolled beneath the fence and into our neighbor's detached garage. Within minutes, the garage was on fire. Fire trucks showed up. Police showed up. The neighbors were hysterical. Chase stood in the yard crying. My father didn't yell at him. He pulled me into the kitchen and slapped me across the face. "Why weren't you watching him?" I was so stunned I couldn't even answer. Then he laid out the plan. "When the police ask, you're saying it was you." "I didn't do it," I whispered. He leaned closer, voice low and icy. "Chase is fragile. If this goes on his record, it could ruin his future. You can handle it. You're strong." That was the logic in our house. Chase's future mattered. Mine was a buffer. So when the officer came to the door, I confessed. My parents let me do it. Later that night, my father told me I'd shown character. What I had really done was learn the rules. I learned that in our family, Chase created the problem and I became the solution. That pattern never ended. It just matured. By adulthood, I had become the designated shock absorber for every crisis he caused. Financial, emotional, legal, practical. I was the family firewall. My job was to intercept damage before it reached him. And just like any overused system, I was expected to keep functioning no matter how much strain I was under. By college, the split between us had become absurd. I chose computer science and data architecture because I wanted independence. I wanted skills nobody could take from me. I wanted a life built on something measurable. My parents made it clear they weren't paying for any of it. "Working for what you have builds discipline," my father said. So I worked. I studied at East Zurich and pushed myself past exhaustion. I worked nights as a security guard, repaired classmates' laptops for extra money, and picked up weekend shifts washing dishes just to make tuition and rent work. I was tired all the time, but I kept going because there was no backup plan and no one coming to save me. Chase, meanwhile, was financed like a failed startup my parents refused to shut down. They paid for tutors, expensive apartments, vacations, tuition at multiple schools, whatever he needed for his latest reinvention. Business major, creative visionary, tech founder, art history enthusiast. Every identity lasted just long enough for someone else to fund it. He dropped classes the minute they got hard, burned opportunities the second discipline was required. My mother called it sensitivity. My father called it promise. I called it subsidized irresponsibility. When I graduated early at the top of my class, there was no celebration waiting for me. My mother didn't come. My father attended, but spent most of the ceremony staring at his phone. Afterward, he gave me a brief congratulations in the parking lot, and then told me the server system at his office was down and I needed to come fix it that night. 3 days later, Chase announced he was dropping out of yet another program because the professors didn't understand him. My parents bought him a brand new red Mustang. My mother posted photos online talking about how proud she was of his resilience. I saw the post while eating instant noodles in a cramped apartment. That was the moment the whole thing snapped into focus. My competence did not make them respect me. It made me useful. The more responsible I became, the less responsible Chase ever had to be. The only person who never treated me like equipment was my grandfather, Walter. He bought me my first real desktop computer. He listened when I talked. He treated my mind like something valuable in itself, not a resource to mine. Before he died, he told me something I never forgot. Don't let them rewrite who you are. He died in winter quietly, during a brutal storm. I barely had time to grieve before my mother cornered me after the burial and asked me to co-sign a $50,000 loan to clean up one of Chase's cryptocurrency disasters. I was standing beside the grave of the only person in my family who had ever really loved me, and she still saw me as a line of credit. I said no. That was the first real fracture, not the end, but the beginning of it. Years passed. I built a career that paid well, very well. I became a senior cybersecurity architect. I traveled. I invested carefully. I bought a high-end smart penthouse in Tribeca with layered security, biometric access, and more privacy than I'd ever had in my life. I thought success would create distance. I thought money would buy boundaries. Instead, my family treated everything I achieved as a larger reservoir for them to tap. The real break came over Sunday dinner. My parents invited me to their house in the Boston suburbs before I left for a long-term assignment in Switzerland. The house smelled exactly the way it always had. Disinfectant and overcooked dinner. Chase was already there, hunched over his phone, radiating fake exhaustion like a man rehearsing for sympathy. Halfway through the meal, my father cleared his throat. Your brother is having a difficult time right now. I said nothing. My mother took over, voice soft and rehearsed. Since you're moving to Zurich for a while, we thought it would make sense for Chase to stay in your Manhattan place. Just temporarily. A few years, maybe. He needs a strong address while he gets his company off the ground. I set my fork down. A few years? She nodded as if we were discussing furniture placement. It's empty space, honey. It's my home, I said, and no. My father slammed his hand on the table. Don't speak to your mother like that. You've got more money than you know what to do with, and your own brother is struggling. I looked at Chase. He didn't even bother pretending to be embarrassed. He smirked. Because he thought this was already settled. I said it clearly. He is not moving into my home. My mother's face fell into instant injury. You're choosing an apartment over family? No, I said. I'm choosing boundaries over exploitation. Then I stood up and left. Before I was even halfway home, my phone was filling with messages from relatives, calling me selfish, heartless, ungrateful, cold. Normally that kind of pile-on would have worked. This time it didn't. For the first time in my life, I felt something cleaner than guilt. I felt empty in the best possible way. I went back to my penthouse, sat down in my office, opened my laptop, and started an audit. If my family had spent years treating me like infrastructure, then I was going to analyze the system. I pulled 10 years of bank records, transfers, credit cards, statements, tax filings, emails, old receipts, everything. I built spreadsheets, columns, dates, amounts, reasons given, actual purpose. I documented every loan my father never repaid, every rent payment I covered for Chase, every emergency fee, every bailout, every cell phone bill, every fabricated crisis. Even my mother's so-called medical emergencies had patterns. More than once, those urgent costs lined up perfectly with luxury weekend trips. By sunrise, the final total sat on my screen in red. $218,400, the financial cost of being loved by my family. And that figure didn't include time, anxiety, labor, or humiliation, only money. I stared at the number and understood something important. Saying no to the next request would never be enough. They would keep probing, keep reaching, keep testing every opening until they found one. So I decided not to reinforce the wall. I decided to erase the access point. I saved the file as the ledger. Then I opened my work email and accepted the company's standing offer to relocate permanently to Switzerland and help lead our European division. After that, I emailed Victor Thorne. Victor was exactly the kind of man most people avoid unless they have no choice. Sharp, wealthy, relentless, and very good at turning property into leverage. He specialized in commercial real estate and handled conflict the way some men handle sport. I offered him my penthouse at a steep discount in exchange for speed, discretion, and a cash close. He replied almost immediately. We met in his midtown office, a sleek glass high-rise, with no personal warmth anywhere in sight, no family photos, no softness. Just contracts, polished wood, and control. I want an off-market sale, I told him fast. No publicity, no delays, no contingencies. He reviewed the valuation, looked over the images, and said, I can close in 7 business days. But for that kind of speed, I'm taking 20% off. Done. He studied me then, almost curious. Something tells me you're leaving more than a city behind. I'm not leaving, I said. I'm dismantling a system. The sale moved quickly. 7 days later, the money cleared, the deed transferred, and ownership was his. I arranged a short lease back so my furniture could stay until my departure, which meant that to anyone looking in from the outside, nothing had changed. The lights still came on. The blinds still moved on schedule. The apartment still looked occupied. But legally, it wasn't mine anymore. Before I had left New York, I shut down every channel my family had been using. Automatic transfers, gone. Shared phone plan, canceled. Emergency access to linked accounts, removed. Backup funding routes Chase relied on, closed. Then I did the most important thing of all. I transferred the Penthouse security system fully to Victor. Cameras, entry controls, remote access, all of it. My final message to him was simple. If anyone enters that property after I leave, prosecute aggressively. I will not interfere. I didn't bait anyone. I didn't lie. I didn't invite them in. I simply stepped aside and let them act on the entitlement they had always mistaken for permission. 5 days after I arrived in Zurich, I got another confirmation that I had made the right call. A fraud alert lit up my screen. Chase had charged $200 to one of my secondary credit cards at a luxury casino hotel in Las Vegas. He didn't steal the physical card. He used saved card details from years ago, back when I had helped cover his dental surgery. That was who he was. Someone who did not believe my resources ever stopped being available to him. I called my mother. She answered brightly, like nothing in the world was wrong. Chase just used my card to book a luxury suite in Vegas, I said. A beat of silence. Then, oh, Lincoln, don't be dramatic. He's under a lot of stress right now. He committed fraud. He borrowed it. She snapped. He'll pay you back when his funding comes through. I almost laughed. Then she delivered the line that told me everything I needed to know. Anyway, tomorrow we're moving him into your penthouse so he has somewhere stable to land. Not asking. Informing. As if my refusal had been a temporary technical issue they could work around. I told her, I'm not doing anything. I'm just collecting information. Then I hung up, reported the charge as fraud, initiated the reversal, and canceled the card. I knew what would happen next. The hotel would run the card and get a decline. Chase would panic. My father would drain whatever cash reserve he had left to get him out of immediate trouble. And once Chase was back on the East Coast with nowhere to go, my parents would accelerate their plan to install him in my former apartment. That is exactly what they did. Richard pulled money from his company reserves to cover Chase's Vegas fiasco. Chase came home broke and humiliated. My mother pushed the penthouse plan into motion. They assumed I was still paying for a Manhattan home I no longer owned. Victor later forwarded the security footage, access logs, and incident reports. It was almost absurd in its predictability. Chase arrived with 3 large suitcases and avoided the building concierge by entering through the garage. He used the old emergency key to access the private elevator and made his way upstairs. But Victor had changed the security setup. The physical key got him only so far. The main entry required a retinal scan. Chase tried old codes. Failed. Tried again. Failed. Then, instead of stopping, he escalated. As he always did when reality didn't give way fast enough, he yanked a fire extinguisher from the hallway and smashed the biometric panel. That act triggered a silent high-priority alarm directly to building security and local law enforcement. The concierge knew the unit now belonged to Victor and had standing instructions to treat any unauthorized entry as a serious breach. He authorized the response immediately. And that is how my brother ended up on the floor of a penthouse he believed was mine, screaming into a phone from the wrong side of consequences for the first time in his life. 3 weeks passed. I finished my residency paperwork in Switzerland and ignored the flood of messages coming from Boston, New York, and every relative suddenly outraged that I had stopped volunteering for sacrifice. Chase spent 2 nights in a holding cell before my father managed to post bail. Victor refused to go soft. He pushed forward. Eventually, I had to return to New York one last time to wrap up a few remaining business matters. A cousin who worked through my company's travel vendor illegally passed my flight information to my family, so when I landed at JFK, they were waiting. Richard, Eleanor, Chase. All 3 of them near baggage claim, lined up like a firing squad made of wounded entitlement. I could have turned around. I didn't. I walked straight toward them with one carry-on and no fear. My father spoke first. We need to talk, right now. My mother stepped in beside him, furious and trembling. We are not letting you leave again after what you did to your brother. I stopped a few feet away. What exactly do you think I did? Her face hardened. You had him arrested over a misunderstanding. My father pointed at me. You set him up. Call that man and get the charges dropped. I didn't set anything up, I said. He broke into private property that didn't belong to him and destroyed security equipment. It was a mistake, my father barked. You're his brother, you were supposed to protect him. That word, suppose, said everything. I was still in their minds the designated absorber of impact. No, I said, that job is over. Chase finally spoke. You could told us you sold the place, you sick bastard. I looked at him steadily. I told all of you no, repeatedly. You ignored me. Then you stole from me, broke into someone else's home and vandalized it. Those were choices. Then I opened my briefcase and took out the bound report. You want an explanation? I said. Here. It was the ledger, professionally organized and printed, 10 years of evidence. I started reading aloud. Payments to repair Chase's car after a drunk driving crash. IRS penalties I covered for my father. Back rent on multiple apartments to keep Chase from eviction. Emergency transfers. Phone bills. Fraudulent loans. I didn't raise my voice once. When I finished, I closed the folder and said, the total is $218,400. That is what this family has cost me in 10 years. My mother looked stunned. We're your parents. You treated me like an asset, I said, not a son. Before she could launch into another emotional performance, a voice behind me cut through the air. Lincoln. I turned. Victor Thorne was walking toward us in a dark tailored suit, carrying a briefcase, looking exactly like a man who enjoyed finishing things. My father recognized him instantly. His company had been chasing a major contract with Victor's organization. That changed the whole energy at once. Mr. Thorne, my father said, suddenly eager. I've been hoping to speak with you about. Victor lifted one hand and shut him down without even trying. I'm not here for you. Then he turned to me. I brought the finalized incident reports and property damage assessments. My mother stared at him. You filed charges against our son? Victor looked at her with open disbelief. Your son forcibly entered my residence and destroyed specialized security equipment. Of course I filed charges. Then he faced my father. And as for your company's proposal, we do not enter high-trust agreements with organizations tied to this level of personal and legal disorder. Your bid is rejected. I watched the meaning of that land in real time. My brother had criminal exposure. My father had just lost the largest opportunity his business had been pursuing. And the son they'd spent decades draining was leaving for good. For the first time in my life, my father sounded small. Lincoln, he said quietly, please, we need your help. I looked at all three of them. Then I said, it's the truest sentence I've ever spoken. I'm not saving you anymore. And I walked away. 6 months later, Richard's company had downsized and collapsed into bankruptcy proceedings. Most of what remained went to legal fees and damage control. Chase avoided serious prison time only through a plea arrangement that still left him with restitution, restrictions, and a life far smaller than the one he'd always assumed someone else would fund. The last update I heard was that he was working overnight shifts cleaning a gas station. For the first time, no one was rescuing him. As for me, I wake up in Zurich now to a life that is fully my own. No emergency calls, no hidden invoices, no demands disguised as love. I am not a backup bank account. I am not infrastructure. I am not the family firewall. I am a man who finally audited his own life, recognized the corruption, and shut the system down before it killed what was left of him. People think revenge has to be loud. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it sounds like a door closing, locking, and never opening again.